This channel is for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions. Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Invest Like a Pro. So for the past 30 years, I've been providing institutional money managers with research and consulting. And one of the things I've found, I've worked with a lot of value managers over the years. Guys like to buy stocks when they're down. Even the growth stock managers, I've noticed, really like to buy weakness. So I've studied that over the years and look for ways to use technical analysis in a way to buy something when it's down or reversing. So I'm going to give you an example of that today with the stock American Airlines. So let me go ahead and move over to the chart. I've got the 4 charts up. So on the bottom left, I've got a monthly. Then on the bottom right, I've got a weekly. And then a daily upper right and an hourly in the upper left. I'm not really going to focus on the hourly too much today. But it can help you in refining your entries. And I think it's very, very useful when the market gets volatile, as we're starting to see some signs of now. And you need to go down to that time frame just because the risk starts to get a little bit bigger on the daily chart. But let's focus in on the monthly to start. And I want to show how I use this 18 MA, this kind of purple colored line, to really give me a pretty good idea of what's going on with the long-term trend. So if we see what's happened here, it looks to me like we're breaking the downtrend line on the on American Airlines. And notice how the 18-month line was declining and now is rising. And so, you know, it looks like there's signs of a turn developing here. So I don't tend to buy based on the monthly chart alone. What I'm looking for on the monthly is one of two things. I either want a strong trend on the 18-month line, and then I'm looking for pullbacks to it. That's one option. The other option is I'm looking for a long-term downtrend line that's starting to show signs of a turn developing. And once I see that, then I'm going to go down to the lower time frames and see if there's a pattern that develops from that. So that's the starting point, though, and it gets me intrigued when I see the potential. It doesn't mean it's turning, but the potential for reversal developing on the longer-term time frame. So now let's go to the weekly chart, and I want to zoom in on this. This is really the key time frame. And so we know we've broken the downtrend line. We know we've rallied up. So there's a couple things that I'm looking for in this rally that tells me that the buying is pretty decent. So number one, on the move up, we've got this big ADX reading. It actually reached 50 to the upside. And I know it was based on the buying strength because green DI was the reason that was the one that was moving up when the ADX was moving up. So I know that's based on the buyers. Now, so I've got that in place. And when a stock hits the 50 mark like that, it's not an automatic buy on the first pullback, but it's telling you that there was enough buying strength that we should be thinking there's another leg coming at some point down the road. Now, sometimes when you hit 50 like that, you go through a more complex correction before it gets going again. And if you notice what took place, we had this big move to the upside, and we also got MACD to make a pretty decent move away from its zero line. So we were crossing the zero line here, price kept moving up, and we made a decent move away from the zero line. So when we pull back, what I'm watching for is to see if that rally was strong enough, then on the pullback, the MACD line should hold in the area of the zero line. So we've got a zero line going across right here, and it looks like this is setting up, potentially setting up a zero line reversal. So I've got two things going on. Let's look at both these time frames. I've got an 18-month that's turning around, potentially turning around after a pretty nice move off the low, and the 18-month is rising for the first time in quite some time. And then I'm crossing back above the 18, but before that even happens, I want you to kind of look at this in this fashion. Before we even get across above, when we're pulling back, we're in the area of the MACD line holding the 0 area after a strong move to the upside in both MACD and ADX. And if you notice on the decline, the ADX is pretty low. So that's telling me that the sellers are not that strong. So I'm in this position down here really in early September, mid-September, where I know that there are signs of a turn developing on these two time frames. So how do we get in on this pattern? And so there's a couple things developed. Number one, MACD did come back down to the 0 line, so it's a potential it's a potential reversal at the 0 line. But the other thing is that if we compare the low of this bottom here with in price, so price came down and hit this low, and notice how it's making a higher bottom at this level. So if I can get this here, so this low is higher than that low. So we have this higher bottom in place in price based on that. Now, if you look at the MACD made a low here, and now the low on this MACD is lower. So we have a reverse divergence in place on MACD because price is making a higher low and the MACD is making a lower low. Normally, I like to look at 2 consecutive lows, but in this case, it still works. And I always like to look to see if we're getting the potential reverse divergence pattern when we're at the 0 line like this. So these 0 line reversals that have reverse divergence, I think are a little bit more powerful. So I've got all that in place. I've got a rising 18-month for the first time in a few years. So now I'm going to go down to the daily chart because I really don't want to wait for a MACD to cross over the 0 line. So let's just look at this. If I wait for MACD to cross over the 0 line, this stock is going to make a huge move. It's going to be really a late signal. So I don't want to do that, and I don't really want to wait for it to cross above the 18-week either. So I'm going to go down to the lower time frame. So let's look at the daily chart. Now I know. I'm going to circle this so you guys can see it. So this is the zone that I'm looking at to start looking at the lower time frame. So let me go into this and let's look. Now, what I'm trying to find on this time frame is some kind of a signal to the that's telling me that things are shifting back to the upside. And so I talk about the 2 time frame pinch play in my book. And I think this is a version of that because the higher time frame, which is the weekly, has this 0 line reversal pattern developing. And so at this point, I'm going to go and start looking for a MACD pinch. And if you notice, we had a couple here. This one, I think, in the middle of September was really the most ideal because we had a pattern where the 18 was not declining anymore. So you see how this 18 was declining through this period, and then it started to flatten out. And when this triggered, the 18 was actually rising. So I don't like to fight a declining. I don't like to get long. Any time frame that I'm going to buy, I typically don't want to fight the 18 when it's this type of trigger. It's kind of a tight trigger. Because if you notice on a pinch play, if we're going to play a pinch, we kind of want immediate follow through to the upside. So if the 18 is declining, it can really inhibit the immediate follow through. So in this case, we actually had a lower high here, a lower high here, another lower high, and then we took it out here with a rising 18, and that was my trigger to get in this play. So I'm starting with the monthly chart, going down to the weekly. I see some really interesting things developing. I didn't mention even that this was a pinch play on the monthly. We have a pullback to the 18-month, and the MACD is holding. So we've got a lot of different things taking place using MACD as the driver for this trade to really get us in at an unbelievably low point, early point in the move with low risk. And we have the backing of the weekly and the monthly. And this is the type of stock that I think you could take a little profit in this morning move, maybe go to a break even and just see how far this wants to carry, because I would not be surprised if this wants to move up into the mid-20s or something like that. So great risk reward. So that's the kind of trade that I think I would be doing, looking for reversal patterns. Now, I mean, if you're focused on this and you want to just use 2 time frames, that's fine. If you notice though, we still don't have a trigger on the weekly in my view. I don't really see a full-fledged trigger. We're crossing back above the 18. I'd probably wait for a pullback or something like that if I'm using just the weekly. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. Go ahead and post any questions or comments, and we'll see you next week.